is Everyday Expertise, and I'm Angela, and I'm here today with Lucy Mutimer. She is a 2D game artist from Melbourne, Australia, currently working for indie studio Ultimerse in concept art, 2D in-game art, and graphic design, most notably on their game Paper Fire Rookie. Hello!
Hi! It's lovely to chat to you today.
Welcome!
Thank you.
So, how did you get started in 2D art?
My 2D art journey has been both a long and a very short one. At the age of 6, I discovered art. I started doing art lessons after school. I really got into what was a very cool children's activity, which was after school graphite portraiture lessons. After I tried sport for a really long time, and I had a pretty gnarly gymnastics accident, and that was the end of sport for me. I couldn't do it anymore. So I found drawing lessons, and I was mentored in that for about 10 years by a beautiful artist called Glenda Wise, who's a fine artist and illustrator. And from there, I was like, I want to do comics. That was my be all and end all. I did a diploma in visual arts. I got my bachelor's degree in illustration, which was essentially a 3-year course in comic books, which was amazing and brilliant. And funny enough, there's not exactly a 9 to 5 comic book job. So I went straight into freelance graphic design and illustration, just sort of noodling around there. That's the long part of it, and how I explicitly found games after writing it off being like, oh, that's a job for like people's cool older brothers to have. I found a job listing one night for an indie studio, and I'd had a glass of wine. I'd had a rough day at the temp graphic design gig that I'd had, and I just went screw it, and I just put it all in, and I went for that job, and that's how I started working at Ultimerse. I was later told by the manager that hired me at the time, as I was very nervously going to all these interviews, showing them my art and working at the job and doing quite well there, that he was like, I feel like I can tell you this now. It was only you we considered. we saw you, and it was just that. So from there, I've been really privileged to find my home in games.
That's awesome.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's pretty awesome too.
What are your preferred mediums?
I've obviously come a long way from the graphite pencil. Graphite pencil is obviously not industry standard materials anymore. I discovered digital art year one of my bachelor's degree, so a few years into my like studying for art journey, and I hated digital art at first. Was like, this is bah, it's nothing. It's not about the pencils anymore. It's not about the gouache. It's not about the paint. It's about the blah, blah, blah. The computer does it for you, like an ignorant so and so. And I fell in love with it really slowly, just by being forced to use it and adapt. And then I began having an appreciation for it, and I learned how to combine traditional technique with digital. And now all of my work is pretty much digital. And I love it. I use Adobe Photoshop, like Creative Cloud. Unfortunately, GIMP programs like GIMP just aren't for me, but I do love Procreate. Procreate on the iPad is also very fun as well. And my preferred way of drawing is with a very battered Wacom Intuos Pro that I sadly think I have to replace. It's very worn down. Like there's we joke like in art, like you have the shiny part, which is where you sort of live on your tablet.
Yeah.
I've somehow gone a step behind, like a beyond shiny. It's I really feel for this little tablet.
What would you say are your major artistic influences?
Major artistic influences. The one that springs to mind and is a very new one is Bob Ross, believe it or not. How he is able to talk to people about art in a very easy to digest, non gatekeeper way is gorgeous and
Mm.
beautiful. And that's a lesson in art direction for anybody, no matter what your skill is. Babs Tarr is just, she's a comic book artist. She most notably redesigned Barbara Gordon's Batgirl outfit. So it was actually an outfit women would wear. Shocking, I know. And she's just this incredible artist that combines the female gaze with pin-up cheesecake traditional art with these gorgeous like lines and ink and pen drawing, and stunning.
Mm.
And then of course there's like my friends artists like Jake Bartok, who loves to draw Star Wars stuff. Is just like, he's come so far in such a short amount of time. Love you, Jake. And then Yeah, it's I have so many. It changes all the time, but
Mm.
those are the 3 that are sort of rattling around in my head at the moment.
You have great, vibrant colors in your art.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Um, oh, which one for is there something that inspired you to to do your art that way, or is it just how you like to see the world, kind of?
Yeah, it's a bit of both. Like,
Mhm.
color is such a fascinating thing. I just, for the longest time, I assumed that that's how everybody approached color in their work.
Mm,
I didn't know that I was. We talk a lot about having a style as an artist, and spoiler alert, the style was you all along, you big goose. And I guess I just didn't assume it was anything different or special. I just sort of thought that's how you did things. And it's
mhm,
only recently I approach art very in colors. I'm very attracted to color. I think color is such an underrated tool in both art being developed for games and viz dev, but also just
mhm,
art in general. It can change the whole mood of a piece so easily and so quickly. I'm drawn to color, I think, because of my graphic design training.
mhm,
Graphic design, you are taught, you often have a style guide to work from. And you have your what's called your core brand colors. You cannot use a shade darker, a shade lighter. You have to use these. These were designed by committee, designed by spreadsheet. You must use these colors or you will die. And then you have the sub colors, which are usually a bit more fun. They don't really care about them as much, and you can only use them once or twice. And having to work in that very confined environment, I could have opinions about those colors. I could hate them. They were often not great. Uh, Corporate design palettes are certainly something interesting, but I was forced to use them and make them striking and stunning because that's my job.
mhm,
And from there, I sort of developed an understanding of okay, if you can make ugly colors look good, you have to be able to take that to the work that you're passionate about, and it naturally bled into that. I'm also from like I have that fine art sort of background, so for me, it's like okay, I'm very familiar with color theory and the color wheel and how to make colors pop and this, that, and the other. So for me, it's a combination of training and just appreciation of having to make things that aren't sexy work in a very visually appealing way that sort of led to this. Like, maybe I'll do the whole thing in pinks. Maybe I'll do
mhm.
the whole thing in like heavily contrasting things. So that's the very long answer to a very, very excellent question.
That's a very good answer
Thank
to a
you.
very rambling question, so that's
No,
good.
it's a great question.
Were you a gamer at all before you started working in video games?
Yes, I was. So a bit of, I guess, a bit more background information on me.
Mhm,
Another very potentially rambling answer.
mhm,
I grew up in a little town called Tacoma.
mhm,
Tacoma, for those of you who have never heard of it, which is everyone, is next to a town called Belgrade, which is a tourist destination if you live in Victoria. It's got the Puffing Billy. It's Australia's
mhm.
oldest, I think, railway system.
Oh, yeah.
It is on the side of a cliff. I lived on the side of a forest cliff. I lived in the middle of a forest. So, understandably, based on this, internet wasn't a thing. And we had one library that was very well stocked, incredible. Whoever that librarian was that stocked it full of fun anime and like comic stuff,
Mhm,
godsend. Because of that, games were this really amazing mystery to me. Whenever we
mhm,
got a video game, I would obsessively pore over it. And everyone had Nintendos. No one really had a PlayStation. So I missed out on PlayStation's entire library except for Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2 until
mhm,
I was about 18. So I had no idea what a Metal Gear Solid was. Final Fantasy, I've never heard of it. Maybe there was an ad on the TV once. But then there was also games that felt inaccessible to me, like Majora's Masks, for example. I never played that because when I would borrow it from my Video Easy to play on my Nintendo, I'd play other people's save files and not have any idea what I was doing. So the games that I played and would obsess over were The Sims. I was gifted that from a friend for my 10th birthday.
mm,
And that was like the first time I remember seriously connecting with a video game. I poured over it obsessively. Through some more traumatic times in my life, it was there. I
mm,
could, when things felt chaotic outside of everything else, I could create this perfectly manicured little box. I could mod outfits. I taught myself how to mod in The Sims 2 purely so I could have pink hair and My Chemical Romance shirts. which is, I wish I could say I don't bring that up at like industry events and interviews that I go to as a point of pride, but here we are. Um, but it was this perfectly little manicured world, and it was so different from everything else. I would dream about The Sims. I would wake up and I would go in, I'd be in school playing with my friends, like doing everything else, and I'd be thinking like, can I play The Sims again? And then after The Sims, when I got my Nintendo, like I really got into my Nintendo 64. It was Super Smash Brothers, and then it was Pokemon Silver on my second-hand OG Game Boy. And I couldn't play as a girl, so I just sort of would role play as a boy in that, and that introduced me to sort of that. And I was obsessed, even though I didn't have games weren't accessible to me. I somehow always found a way to play them.
Mm.
Um, as I got older, my living situation was very chaotic. I was also going through art school. And I was poor. Like I had no money, and it's like buying the new PlayStation, like 3 or PlayStation 4, was not a priority anymore.
Mm.
It was buying a computer that could run Photoshop that I may have or may not have obtained through legal reasons, so I could complete assignments and I could make animation,
Mhm.
and like I could buy paints. I was doing a lot of public art at the time. So could I buy spray paint? Could I buy cardboard for stencils? Could I buy materials for paste ups and this, that, and the other? And I was also part of an art collective. So priorities completely shifted.
Mm.
I enjoyed games. My proudest memory was at the time The Sims 2 stopped being supported on Macs. So I trolled through how to get The Sims 2 running on like Windows, whatever at the time, like tutorials online, and adapted that to run on my very bad MacBook laptop, which I still have downstairs. And I like got that working, and that was all the games I needed. And then I met my husband. We subsequently moved in, and he had an opposite experience to me. He had the similar thing. He literally grew up on the other side of the hill. Um, but he sort of prioritized getting those games that he loved and was never able
Mhm.
to afford to play. So when I moved in with him, I also moved in with a PlayStation 3, a PlayStation 1, a PlayStation 2, an Xbox, a like Nintendo Wii U. We are one of the 7 people that bought a Wii U, a Nintendo Wii Fit board. I've got a Sega Mega Drive now. I didn't know what those were. Like everything. He collects consoles and retro gameware,
Yeah.
and this thing here is full of them. We had 2 GameCubes for the first time. We were one of the 10 people that bought 2 GameCubes. Like that was sort of it. And so I sort of started rediscovering it because I
Mhm.
had finished art school. I was doing freelance, so I was working stupid hours, and I didn't necessarily want to come home and draw again. So I
Mhm.
started playing again, and the games I was playing were games that I could hear about. So I knew of, like, say for example, I knew of Mass Effect. I knew that you could romance people in Mass Effect. I knew that it was a role-playing space opera. I had no idea. I didn't know why people were mad at the ending. I had no context. I had just learned who Solid Snake was through Super Smash Brothers. Like that was sort of my like, and so I started playing these games again. And
Mhm.
the catalyst that really kicked it off, and it's a game I'm proud to say I have tattooed on me on my leg, on the sticker leg, is I was really, really depressed. It was just before I was diagnosed with major depression, and it was the same time I got a job in the games industry.
Mhm.
It was my birthday. It was a week before we went to Fiji for a wedding, and my then boyfriend, now husband, came home and he said, "I've got something for you. This is either going to be nothing to you, like you're just going to play it for 10 minutes, put it down, whatever. But if you love this, there's like a 10% chance you're going to love this and you're never going to put this video game down." And it was Dragon Age Inquisition.
Mm.
I booted that bad boy up. I've got no idea how to play like a Bioware game, quote quote. Like I've got no idea how to play a role playing game. I've got
Mhm.
nothing. So an open world RPG, with especially one like Inquisition that has got what some people feel are very broad maps with not a whole lot of directions at times.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, was a very interesting experience for me, but I enjoyed it. Like, I didn't put this game down. I played my first playthrough of Dragon Age Inquisition on the PlayStation was over 200 hours long. Most of that is because I got stuck in the hinterlands and couldn't get out. But
Mm.
I enjoyed the hinterlands so much, I didn't realize that there was other game. And that just got me in. I got my job in games after that. I fell in love with games. I discovered Dungeons and Dragons after that.
Mhm.
And now we still play with that same group of friends now. And I got into video games again. I started playing Mass Effect. I got more into The Sims, if that's possible. I started discovering like indie games, like Dream Daddy was sort of the first indie game that I played in. Sorry, excuse me, in a really long time.
Mhm.
Um, and I started going through that back catalog. I was like, "What's a Fallout? Fuck it, I'll play a Fallout." And so to answer your question, which was so sorry, it was like it was like a big gap, and then I consumed everything all at once. So was I a gamer by the traditional sense? No, I
Mhm.
don't think I was, but I was obsessed with them in a very specific and very niche way that
Mm.
has informed my approach to them, because I guess I have the approach now. If your game is only accessible to someone who identifies as gamer and lives and breathes only these things, you're missing out on beautiful people that could
Mhm.
very much just go into that and just find something and maybe help them heal from something traumatic, as I did. So there you go. That's another
Yeah.
very long answer to a very good question.
Yeah, and of course, and as I think video games evolve, and they bring in new demographics, you're going to have people with all kinds of stories of how they got into games or
Yeah.
how they were into it and then left and then came back,
Mhm.
you know.
I almost think it's I almost think it's a tad more interesting than person that was like, oh yeah, I found games and I just didn't stop playing them. And it's like, that's beautiful and valid, and I love that for you. But for me, those stories where it's like, oh, I love hearing about people that are like, oh, I don't play games. I'm like, no, 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 no. What do you do to unwind? And it's like I have a friend. He's a Jacob Knight. He's a gorgeous writer,
Mhm.
beautiful, beautiful human.
Mhm.
Um, Jesse McCartney's beautiful soul was definitely written about that boy. And he was like, "No, I don't play video games." And I'm like, "No, no, 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 no. What do you play?" And then I found
Mhm.
out he's a Sims player, but he only plays The Sims, and he plays
Mhm.
it. He's had the one save for over 2 years. That's one
That's
Sims family for over 2 years. No one has that.
that's amazing just in terms of The
Yeah,
Sims.
yeah,
I've
like,
never had a Sim save that
yeah,
lasted
yeah.
years
Like, bug
without
fixing
without
aside,
corruption.
yes, the corruption on like a development level, amazing. What is your computer? It's a 2015 MacBook Air. Like, it should not be running it. And then on the
Oh.
other hand, it's you played the one family, and I'm like, oh, so you have aging like turned on. Like, how many generations have you been? It's like, oh no, it's the one family. I just really enjoyed the game. It's how I unwind after work. And I'm like, you've got to be bloody kidding me. And then I've got other people. It's like, oh yeah, I don't like playing online games. I'm like, oh, that's okay. Like, I'm a bit the same. Like, but I still play them, and I still have ones I enjoy. Like, what do you do? And I've got friends who like friends of diverse genders and friends who are women who are like, I love Overwatch because I can play as this cool girl in like a pink robot. I like the girl, the pink robot, and to me that's so interesting because it's like
Mhm.
they don't know the names of the characters necessarily. They won't buy the T-shirt, but they're probably like as passionate, or if so more so, than someone who maybe has like the whole
Mm.
diva razor setup or this, that, and the other. And I love seeing the contrast between two very passionate kinds of
Mm.
gamer. Um, Both are incredibly valid and wonderful, but I personally I love hearing about those more convoluted. Maybe because I see a lot of myself in a rise to gamer fan.
Yeah. Okay, so Paper Fire Rookie.
Yes,
It's a VR game.
yes.
What did you find different about working on a VR game as opposed to say
Yeah.
other works that you've done?
Um, you have to think about things in a way that you never previously would have thought of.
Mm.
From an art perspective, you have to all of a sudden, like the smallest object, first of all, your player's going to want to pick it up.
Mhm.
It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter if it's a sign that says, do not pick me up for any reason, the whole game will explode. Your player is going to pick it up. and you have to live with that. Not
Mhm.
only is your player going to pick this up, they're going to look at it from all angles possible. And if one of those angles doesn't look great, they're going to notice it straight away. And you have to live with that.
Mm.
VR, as an artist, you have to learn to let go and you have to learn to just
Mm.
accept there are going to be things outside your control. Also, you have to learn to accept that things are going to break in a very specific way. Or you might design something and it's like, I got a great idea for a critical path. It's going to be brilliant. Game of the year material. You'll design it. Playtester goes in. Playtester yanks the Venkman helmet off, yeets it across the room. I'm going to vomit. It's like, oh, why? And then you look into it. It's like there's like a patch of that gray that you chose for the literal critical path. That's the vomit inducing gray that when you look down, your
Mhm.
brain is like, I am falling. I am standing on nothing. Bad place, bad place, bad place. And you have to really think, or if your color saturation is too high, that can also throw people off. And are objects
Oh.
coming at you like you would in a typical video game? Nah, get rid of that. That's also
Mm.
the bad place. Because if we learn, the most crucial thing we learn is if something, we have a lot of NPCs in Paper Fire Rookie that sort of walk around. That was a great day when we got that working. Like we all had a bit of a yay moment. Um, but when they walk towards you, if they walk through you, the bad place that your brain goes, you don't want your player to experience that because it can
Mm.
either result in vomit, migraine, or the tippy top of that triangle, which is just bad tingly sensation
Mm.
that is like the only thing I can sort of describe it is like deep discomfort, and you
Mm.
can't articulate why. Those are sort of the big things that you have to reassess, and those things can come out of anything. Like it can come out of like a small detail in an object that you were like, oh yeah, this will be in the background, far off in the blah 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 blah. Players will go into your out of bounds area. You just have to accept that.
Mm.
Um, and then the other stuff is like normal gameplay, like design elements and aesthetics and yada yada. You can use them as a starting point, but you really have to get super inventive and
Mm.
you have to really think like, okay, you can't think like a like reference because VR is such a wild west anyway. You can't think, okay, like I'm going to use previous games as a reference point here. You can use them as a starting point. You can't use them as the end point
Mm.
because could make your player chunder all over their very expensive computer and headset, and they don't want to do that. This is the most I've talked about vomit in any interview. I'm so sorry.
Well, hopefully,
um,
hopefully the next people who make VR games are like, right, gotta remember,
yeah, yeah.
don't make your player
Um,
vomit.
I love any design meeting where your very well intentioned, gorgeous, like game designer friend is there. Like, what if we what if the object comes at your face, but like it clips through the player when it doesn't do that? I want you to imagine a tiny 5'2" Australian shaking them by the shoulders, going, "Don't do it." We've done it a few times in our game, but it was weeks of discussion. And even now, we have times where we're like, we could have implemented that better. And that just comes through developing. You learn as you develop, which is the other big thing with it. You never stop learning, but sometimes you learn the hard way. Yep.
Okay, so this show is very much about process. Can you describe your process for a typical project from when you become involved to when you deliver your work?
Yeah. The 2D artist, if I were to describe game development as a car,
Mhm.
2D Viz Dev, your foot goes on the accelerator first because you need a reference point. You are there to take all of the ideas and all the questions, most importantly,
Mhm.
that are being asked by your team, and condense them down and produce a visual aid that will supplement that and help inform decision making.
Mhm.
Your foot goes on the accelerator first and it goes on bloody hard, and you often have nothing to work with other than like throwaway questions that were asked. If you're very lucky and if you're very loud like me, you get a brief and
Mhm.
you get things documented. This is also a secret game developer thing of like, can we please start writing things down as an industry?
Yes, I
Yes.
I agree with you.
Your foot goes down first because I can't make an asset list without a visual aid that's been approved, signed, sealed, delivered. So my 3D artist can't get started building things. My environment artist can't start doing things. My designer can't start visualizing a critical path.
Mhm.
So your foot goes down first. And it's often not for sexy looking art either. Very rarely does the gorgeous like concept art book material get produced in that first thing. I'm often just sketching things, holding it up and going, is this anything? We call it the spaghetti at the wall phase, like, because you're just
Yeah.
throwing stuff. It's often not going to make it into the last part of the game. Don't get attached to anything.
Mhm.
As game development goes on, your foot starts to ease off that pedal, but your foot pedal might shift to other things. For me, because I work in a small team, I'm doing user interface design and development because I have that graphic design background. It informs a lot of that, and I work very closely with our lead to develop that. But then I also do things like texturing because I have those skills. Like if we need backup textures done, I can easily slot in, help our 3D team out. So your foot goes off the accelerator because as things naturally progress, the visual aid and visual art that you need, like so the concept development, the visual development becomes way more specific and way more niche, but you also need less of it. So the ones that you're expected to build and to make
Mhm.
maybe become a bit more refined because that's just how process works, of course. At the end of a project, my foot's usually off the accelerator until I want to say the last month.
Mhm.
Last month, my foot goes right back down. I slam it down because someone's got to make a logo. Someone's going to make Steam Store assets. Someone's going to make Epic Store assets. Those things don't just magically appear. Unfortunately, there's no Photoshop action I can run that resizes everything to the correct Steam Store dimensions.
Mm.
Because there's so many of them, and one of them is a file format that Photoshop no longer exports to. um, that's some Steam Store backend that your viewers did not ask for, but I'm going to give them. And you have to produce all of this. You have to produce logos. Those logos often don't go through the first time. Developing a logo for an IP is an incredibly tedious, long game. It's not a
Mm.
sprint, it's a marathon. It's sometimes a triathlon because you have to send it to people you've never met. They don't draw, they don't give a shit about your creative process, but they will come back with a page of notes. And it's often things like the lawyer does not think we should use this color. Okay, great. Again, I
Yeah.
can't get upset by I can get frustrated. I can go
Yeah.
and make a very, very strong cup of tea and dunk the tea
Mhm.
bag while thinking unpleasant things in the kitchenette. I can't go and find the lawyer and yell at him and tell him he's wrong because my years of color theory have informed X, Y, and Z. I have to implement it. So that feedback iteration period is like, and you've got to get it done. You've got publishers on the horn. They have a game they
Mhm.
have to ship.
Yep.
You have to get it all done. So you get it all done. Your foot goes off the pedal, and just as you're about to sit back because you let the game is shipped, look at this beautiful game. Look at this beautiful bow I put on this game. The logos are done. The biz dev's done. We'll start doing like Twitter releases of that concept art that looked really schmick. Or maybe I'm taking the time to do some concept art that's not actually concept art. It's promotional images that just look really gorgeous. And because the team's just like, you draw some fully sick things. I really like how you draw this character. Draw them for me. You get a little tap on the shoulder and
Mm.
it's loose. The team's pretty much finished. But you, my sweet, my beautiful little 2D artist, PAX is in 2 months and we need a booth. So you then have to go and do all the promotional images for that. Building a PAX booth is a thing of labor and love that will make you cry at your computer desk. Um, yeah, and then after that, my foot comes off the pedal and I sip a mojito on the beach. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, so it's in the middle that's probably the most interesting part. You get to enjoy the process a bit. You look over at your coworker that's maybe freaking out because
Mhm.
something isn't working, there's a bug, but you can go like, "Oh, here's the cool picture I drew. But does this image answer your question about this?" And you can inform color theory, so you become
Mhm.
more of a sounding board and more of an artistic voice and someone that
Mhm.
helps guide any style choices. Because style like art choices still have to be made. Like if you're there sort of like you've built the room based on like gray box images and yada yada yada, you're there. It could be like, is this working? Like that's often you get to go back to the drawing board, no pun intended,
Mhm.
on those things. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like a car, but way more chaotic.
All right. What's something you wish you'd known about making art before you started?
You will have days where you don't enjoy drawing.
Mm.
And that's not because you hate your job, quote unquote. Like, it's not because your job is bad. It's not because you're a bad artist either. Doing something you love does not mean you're going to love it 9 to 5 every day of the week. And you're going to have to approach it as a bandwidth sort of thing.
Mm.
And if you have a bad day, that doesn't mean you're a crap artist. I cannot emphasize that enough. And that's the thing I really wish a lot of younger artists entering our industry really know. And there's also, you're going to get feedback. You're going to get a lot of feedback. You're often going to get a lot of feedback from a lot of people who aren't in your field at all. And their feedback is valid and often crucial. You cannot be upset by this feedback. You must iterate on it.
Mm.
It does not matter if you have a difference of opinion. It does not matter if you feel that it is a stupid opinion. Um, you must implement that because the chain of command requires it. This person is often more senior than you. They are asking you to implement a thing. Trust them. You have to trust your team with that. And you have to learn to not get attached to things. Like if you pitch something week one of making this game, it's not going to be there by week 50. It's just not. Or a version of it's going to exist. You have to learn to collaborate with people that don't think like you.
Hmm.
That's really what I wish, especially young me and younger artists like me entering this industry for the first time. Those are the biggest things I wish just to listen to. Um, it's not that you're a bad artist. It's not that your work is like bad. Sometimes you've just got to listen to others and you've got to learn to work with them and you've got to learn to take all this stuff on board. I would also like an asterisk, a caveat. This obviously does not apply if you are getting sexist, racist, homophobic direction. This is
Hmm.
your work is not hitting this brief because of XYZ legitimate reason. If it is one of those not great pieces of feedback, then that's something that you take up with your team and your HR person.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yes.
Yeah, if the only direction you're getting is make the boobs bigger or
Yeah.
something like
Fight back
this.
against that. That
Yeah.
sucks. That's a bad opinion. Unless it's like you're making a Power Girl video game and
Yeah.
she like you've given her an A cup, I guess. Like that's valid feedback then. If
That's
you're
true.
being told why does your female character like give her more hip swing, like walk for like sexy reasons, so you fight back against that. And but not in like a like do it in a hostile way, I guess. Maybe not. Like no one likes to be hostile at work, but like ask those tough questions of why do you feel that in the example of an animation walk style, why do you feel that a female character should be walking like this? Is this crucial to her character? Like ask those questions because maybe you'll also educate the other person. Um, but yeah, take on that feedback, please.
So, what would you say is your favorite aspect of making art?
I work a job that would make 5-year-old me incredibly happy, which is very selfish, very narcissistic. But the whenever I have a rough day, I say out loud to my husband, who he works retail. He was a retail manager. I say to him like, the thing didn't work because I didn't draw the thing right, and he just looks at me and he's like, "That's valid. I understand that you're upset, rah, rah, but it's like you draw for a living. You get to draw for video games for a living." I'm like, "Oh, perspective, right? You had someone yell at you today. I didn't have that." It's like so. I just think of it like that. If I'm having a rough go of it, I think to myself, if you got to go back and say to 6-year-old you get to draw for video games, she would be psyched. And meeting other artists and talking to them about things that you're working on and showing each other your work is incredible as well. It's those little things like at the core of it, I get to draw every day. It would make me in any other life stage very happy to know that I get to draw every day for video games.
Do you have a least favorite? Something that frustrates you?
Yes. um, yes. I have so many. I I get for me personally, I get really frustrated when like unproductive like work discussion with work is really frustrating. Or when I encounter people who are like, oh, I don't like that, or this isn't working. We're talking about that feedback thing again. There is
Mhm.
such a thing as not great feedback that's not
Yeah.
productive. And
People
it's
who haven't learned how to give constructive feedback.
yes, I find it really, really frustrating. The other much more petty one is I get really frustrated with being an artist because I find that a lot of our digital tools, our industry standard tools, are not accessible to the average teenager. Um,
Ooh.
you want to learn how to play around in a game engine? Amazing, great. There's some
Mm,
free ones that not a whole lot of us use.
mhm,
And then you've got your paid ones that you have to be a student to maybe get a discount on.
mm.
Photoshop isn't accessible the way it was when I was a teenager, or
No.
it's not legally accessible. I am not condoning things, but yo ho ho.
Yeah.
Um, 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 it's not accessible.
Mhm,
And then one of your best industry standard options is get an iPad and an Apple Pencil, which that's a 800 Australian dollar investment right away.
mhm,
That really frustrates me. How can I tell, like, when if I have a 14-year-old come up to me who is like, I draw with pencils, how can I be a game artist and I draw really shit hot stuff with pencils? I can say to it, yes, that's amazing. And that is a perspective that we need. But you're also going to have to draw digitally. Okay, can I use to draw digitally that's free? And I'm there like, there's some tools, but you're going to have some funky roadblocks. And it's like, I can say, use these free like Photoshop alternatives until the cows come home. But I don't know how much that's going to help that 14-year-old when they're 25 and they're working their first industry job and they're sat down with their computer and it's not an iPad with an Apple Pencil, and it's not Critter or anything like a free program. It's Adobe Photoshop. And even though, yes, there's a similar crossover, there's no industry standard sort of thing for
mm,
like certain filters and certain tools and certain brush settings. So him or her or they are going to spend their first few weeks feeling a bit lost. There's nothing I can do to sort of be a shield for that. Um, Something I really also don't like about our industry is how I guess this is my spiciest opinion. We, at face value, are very much like, yes, let's do these diversity initiatives. Let's get these girls to work.
mm.
We don't do a whole lot of them once they're there. And after 3 years, we tend to leave, and we don't just like trickle off. We leave in droves. So that
Yeah.
3 year mark, that's devastating, and bluntly, it's not good enough. So what can and it's I'm at that 3 year mark now. I ask myself the question: okay, I'm at that point. What can I do to make sure that people like me don't leave?
Mm,
What safety nets am I putting down now to so that people, when they reach their 3 years, they can use that as a step up to their fourth year or their fifth year, rather than going, games was a fun thing I worked on for 3 years of my life. I don't have all the answers to that, which is also very frustrating. But I know that we need to do better.
yeah.
Mm.
No, definitely. I mean, I think we need to do better for everyone, really,
Oh, we
because
absolutely do.
even not women, not other genders, or it's just like men and stuff, right? A lot of men um sort of burn out after
Yeah.
like 5 years or something like this.
We have such a high burnout rate, and it's really unacceptable. I think now that the conversations have started, it seems like we are beginning to have that awareness in certain areas. So I'm hoping we talk a lot about in some therapy sessions about once you're aware, it's impossible to go back.
Mm,
And I really hope that that's the case for everybody, because if we keep all of us around for a lot longer, and there's some really amazing voices at that 3 year mark that are always going to be bringing fresh, cool stuff to the table, you're going to have a stronger industry 10 years from now.
hmm
And I hope I'm here 10 years from now still having these cool conversations with you with rambling answers.
I hope so too. On that, how do you cope with stress or obstacles in your work? Does your studio have crunch?
Our studio does not have crunch, or we do overtime.
Okay.
Um, Overtime we do, our overtime is paid, or sometimes, if, say, for example, I'll do overtime, it's not ever excessively long, and I make up for it like either immediately the next day or that week, or we do paid
Mm-hmm.
overtime. So we have a scheme in place for that. And we have a boss, and we've always had management that have been very immediate management that have always been very like, no, go to sleep, stop that, like, stop working. We do have some employees that occasionally will go into crunch territory,
Mm-hmm.
but it's something that they work on with our management, and there are plans in place for when that starts to happen. And we have those discussions about, like, okay, what example are you setting? What can we do better so this does not happen? Um, I have not experienced the level of crunch that, say, your AAA studio. You hear the horror stories about AAA
Yeah.
studios. So admit that I have that privilege and naivety of like, crunch is bad, but I've never experienced a 15-hour week, 15-hour everyday work week. So I do I do think I do have a very privileged and naive opinion on it. I obviously think it's abhorrent. The city I'm in is a pro-union town as well, so for me, all I can say of that is I think the sooner we have like safe, socially acceptable and workplace acceptable boundaries
Mm-hmm.
and unions to support that, and not just one union, several, so we can make that choice, like what works for you, the healthier as an industry we're going to be.
Of course, yeah. So
Hmm.
how do you? So other than that, then
Oh,
how do
sorry.
you
Yes.
cope with? No, no, no. I went over. I went on a tangent, so it's good. We're coming back.
Tangents.
How do you cope with stress then? Uh,
I I see a therapist once a month. Uh, I'm a game developer and an artist with major depression and general anxiety disorder, and I also have a few other kooky things that go into that homebrew cocktail of stuff. It's a real old family recipe casserole I've got going on with my brain. So I see a therapist. Through that, I do a lot of cognitive sort of therapy and talking about like how I process things and articulating things. I take steps back. I love the gym. It's been in the last couple of years that I've really rediscovered my love for sport and exercise.
mhm,
Gymnastics will stop me from doing things no more. I do yoga, which is really, really
mhm,
helpful. It's such a live, laugh, love way of coping. But it's really helpful. I love the little meditation as well that you do afterwards. Learning how to meditate, especially as someone who's very extroverted and high strung and struggles sitting still for long periods of time and is caffeinated, is
mm,
challenging. But I find that when I do it, I'm a better worker. I'm a better person in my home and personal life. And I'm less likely, the small things that maybe go wrong in my day, if you can get yourself into a mentally healthy work life balance place where the small things that happen at work that are frustrating or crappy, they're still frustrating or crappy, they make you frustrated in that moment or angry or whatever, but they don't dictate that your whole day has been a write off, that's great. And
mm,
I encourage the advice I've been given from senior people in this industry who mentor me and who have mentored me, and the one that I will pass on is get your head in a great space. There's a few apps I've used, like the Headspace app, which is so many delightful British accents telling you about little meditation things and that. Learning how to do those things and finding hobbies that aren't at a screen has also been amazing. Just as like a good life rule, get a library card. Um, like just doing little things like house plants,
mhm,
gardening. Gardening is a great one. Get yourself a tomato plant that you start to consider making family Christmas cards for. Um, Totally not something I've done. And find those things and really make sure that you have a life outside of games that's purely for you. Not because games can't be a beautiful healing
mm,
tool, but because you need a break, man. You
yeah.
need a break.
Mm, no, that makes sense.
Yeah. So that's how I cope. I cultivate a a very self-care focused life outside of my work that makes me not just a better person so I can make games, but makes me just a better person to, it's like a better friend, a better wife, a better community member, and a better artist as well. This traumatized artist is a myth. You draw your best stuff when you're not dying.
That's cool.
Yeah, it is cool. Having a good headspace is cool, kids. Is my big advice. Put that on the sticker.
So we've talked about a lot. Do you have any
Yeah.
more advice for people starting out in 2D art?
We talk about the gaze a lot as an artist. If you're a traditional trained artist like me, we talk a lot about the gaze.
Mhm.
A lot of people online might have heard a lot of talk about the female gaze versus the male gaze, and that's valid and amazing. And I could do a whole gender studies art talk on that, but that is the wrong thing for this channel. You have not asked for that, and I'm actually going to stick to the question this time. Critique your own gaze constantly. That sounds like something that maybe an anxious person would do, and I am an anxious person, so it checks out. But everything you consume as an artist informs your work. That anime you watched under the covers at the age of 13, that informs your work when you're 27. I wish it didn't, but Yu Gi Oh! Still informs my work to this day. All those things inform your work, they inform your practice.
Mhm.
So, my biggest piece of advice is if you are consuming one kind of video game art and it's, say, a very popular front page of a website that rhymes with schmation, that's not to say that that website's bad or anything. It's just one place. You're going to regurgitate that same stuff and you're only going to do that. Your work is going to look and feel stale. It's not going to bring anything new to the conversation. As someone looking through portfolios and making work, I'm not going to be engaged by it. That's the blunt and very rude answer. However, if you are an artist and you have artistic interests that aren't things like uh, just the one very generic kind of concept art we see all the time. If you have a big passion for like pen and ink drawing and you do that on the side, or if you are really, I don't know, you're a fan person for Gustav Klimt's work, or you just really like me, Bob Ross scenic illustrations because you're stressed and they calm you down. That's going to inform your work too. And it's going to make your work so much more interesting. And you're going to have so many more things to say. Please consume art and media that isn't just game art. If you need a hand with this, Vogue's whole fashion library is completely free on their website. Please learn fashion in game art, everyone. It has its own nuances and themes and movements. You can, so many galleries now are doing like free virtual tours of like weird modern art. You don't have to love modern art. Like a lot of it I look at and I roll my eyes at because I'm like, cool, calm down, trust fund baby. I get it. You have 20 TVs and you hook them up to a blah, 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 revolutionary. But the fact is that you've consumed it and you're able to have an opinion on it. That's still going to inform your work. Get as much as you can for as many diverse sources, and your work's going to be strong. It's going to be cool. It's going to say new things. And you're going to bring stuff to the table that when we're in one of those design meetings where we're at the end of our ropes and someone taps a whiteboard and with a marker and says, there are no bad ideas, you're going to come out with a genuinely great idea in that moment that isn't an idea that makes us go, this is why we don't have these meetings. So please look at as much art as you can.
I think that's great advice.
Thank you. I hope it is. And I guess as well, I always love people who are drawing. Yes, there's a certain amount of talent involved, but I've also done what's called my 1,000 hours. I've been drawing since I was 6 and I'm now 27. So of course, I've been drawing a lot, and that's why my work looks the way it does. But it's also, if you want to start drawing, it's actually not that hard once you get started. Getting started is the easy part. Babs Tarr, the artist I mentioned earlier, through the fine folks at Critical Role, runs a How to Draw YouTube series. If you want to get really good at drawing in a pretty short amount of time that gives you those foundations, it's the best series. I recommend it to every new starting artist.
Cool.
Yeah.
So Lucy, how can people find out more about you and your work?
If you, I guess, enjoyed hearing me talk a lot about a lot of different things, you can find me on Twitter under the moniker Lucy Crime Fighter. I talk about things that aren't just art as well. And every Friday, I'm trying to, while this is all happening, I'm trying to post color palettes for you to use and incorporate into your own work. You can also find me on Instagram under Lucy Mutimer, and I post my own work there as well. I have my website, lucymutimer.com. And I'd also recommend, I'm just going to plug our studio's website because why the hell not? You can find more about us at ultimerse.com.au, I want to say. Yes, or .com, one of the two. We're going to be talking about some stuff really, really soon that I'm really passionate about.
That's all.
So you should subscribe to our mailing list. It's one of the, I know the person who writes them. He's a delight.
That's awesome. And we will have links to all of this in the description below.
Yay!
Down there.
This is my first description below thing. I'm so excited.
All right. Well, thank you, Lucy. Thank you, everybody, for watching. This has been Everyday Expertise.
Bye. Bye.
Thanks for watching. We hope you enjoyed this interview. Be sure to share this video with friends and colleagues who may also enjoy this topic. Let us know your thoughts by leaving a comment below or check the description for our social media. See you next time.